I'm gonna go over the solution of this exercise. So let's first add an ID to each one of these. So ID 1 and ID 2. And let's now add the type definitions. So const type defs is equal to GraphQL, and do this. And we have a type of framework that will have 4 fields. First one is an ID that is mandatory. Then we have a title that is a string. URL, you can name it. Oh, it's Git. It's not URL here. It's Git. And Git, which will also be a string. And stars, which is an int. OK, cool. So we have this. So now let's define the 2 types of queries that we actually want. So type query. We'll have a query to get all the frameworks. So it'll just be frameworks. And this will return an array of framework. Cool. And then we'll have our type of framework, which will get, as a parameter, we'll get the ID, which is an ID. And this is a mandatory parameter, so we need to do this. And this will return a single framework. Cool. Let's do the resolvers for this. So const resolvers is equal to yet another object. And this will have a query inside. And we need to define the resolvers for both the queries. So let's start with frameworks. And this is a function that we don't care about the parameters and just returns all of the frameworks. Cool. And then we need to create one for framework. And in here, we actually care about the second parameter. So there we go. We ignore the first one. And in the second one, we can deconstruct the ID out of it. Deconstruction is basically like this is so it's doing the same thing as me coming here and say const ID equals params.id, for example. So we get the ID of it. And what we want to do with it is go in frameworks, find where the f, and I'm going to go with f.id equals the ID that the user has passed. And now let's start the server. So const server equals new Apollo server. And like I said, this will get the type defs and the resolvers. And now let's just server.listen. And then console.log the URL. So this is, I'm just going to call it data. And in here, console.log data, the URL. OK, cool. Oh, yeah, that's right. Thank you. So let me go into this folder. So cd backend 1.2, server exercise, and yarn dev. OK, localhost 4000. Oh, by the way, this saves the things in local storage. That's why you always get the latest, the thing that you edit. So frameworks, and let me get the title and the stars, for example. And if I do this, I get React and Vue. Nice. Let me get the ID instead of the stars. And let me get React, which has an ID of 1. As you can see in here, it passes it as a string. So that's why I always put the double equals instead of the triple equals. So I pass it an ID, and I define the ID as 1. And I get the title, and I get just React, because it's the one that has an ID of 1. Yeah.
What if I have in the type framework another field, for example, developers, and it is an array of developers? I should make a type of developer?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you have a type of developer, for example, and this needs to be an object, for example, and in here you can say just name of the developer, which will be a string. And in here, you will return developers. That will be an array of developer, for example. So you need to do this. And yeah. So this is actually not in here. So, do you guys want to see how to actually return these developers? One way that you can actually do that is using that. So we have these developers here, but this is not actually being returned anywhere in the query. So if I come here and reload the page so that I get the new type definitions, I can come here and return developers and get the name. But this will always give me null because I'm not returning anything in it. So this will always match this. So if I come here and just say developers and give it an array, and inside of it there will be an object. God damn it, this is hard. Name, and it's Dan Abramov, for example. And I do the same thing, it will now return Dan Abramov. Another way that you can do it is just do it as a child of this thing. What I mean, I'll just explain by typing, which just makes it easier. So come here and I defined a request that is framework, but in uppercase. It's framework. And in here, I return a developer. And this will get the parent, parent response, response, okay? And what is wrong here? Okay, it's this. So this part will search every time you search for framework, like in here. So every time you return a framework, this will come here. And if you return a developer, for example, this will come here to actually do the resolver. And OK, so we can say if parent response that title equals React, just return this. OK, so if I search it the same exact thing now, it failed to fetch because I screwed up something. Wait, let me check. Yeah, I missed the thing. Sorry about that. Fat fingers. Do this. What? OK, type name, framework that developer is defined in resolvers but not in schema. Type developer is defined in resolvers but not in, it's right here. Oh, this is developers. Shit. So framework developers. Sorry. Go. Oh, it failed again for some reason. No, there we go. OK, cool. So reload the page, GraphQL playgrounds. Internet fast. Yeah. Oh my God. OK, yeah, you returned Dan Abramov. But since I didn't define anything for view, if I return 2, this will give me null in developers. So this is how you can resolve just one field of your thing. You can also do the same thing that I did in there and just deconstruct it and get title out of it. And you can remove this, for example. So if title equals React, return Dan Abramov. If it's view, just ignore it completely, and we'll just return null. But if I put something like this, so the developer is actually mandatory, and I try to do it with view. Developer is mandatory, and like this means that the developer is mandatory, but it also needs to be an array. So it can't be nullable. If I try to do the same thing, it will give me an error because you cannot return null for non-nullable field framework developers. So there are 2 types of things, exclamation points that you can put here. This means that you need to return a developer, so you can't return an empty array. And this means that you need to return an array of developers. This means that, yeah, so you can't return an empty array by this, and you can't return null by this. Does that make sense? OK. So does anyone have any other questions regarding this exercise? Yeah.
No question. It's only short notice regarding ID. Why do you all the time use string instead of numbers?
I use numbers. Yeah. It turns it into a string.
Yes, but when we work with ID type, it will be serialized all the time to strings.
Yeah. The thing is, most times, so I think this was mostly because some some things like MongoDB don't actually have IDs as integers. They have them as strings. I can also do that, yeah. So I can come here and for each framework, the ID, I get the ID that was returned, and I return a parse int of that ID. Parse int of the ID, and with a thing of 10. And now I can actually put 3 equals here. Yeah, that works perfectly fine as well. So now if I put 3 equals, it actually returns null, either way. What is it? Yeah, but you can also do this. I don't know what this isn't working. ID frameworks that find f.id equals ID. Framework ID. Weird. Let me remove the developer. But yeah, you can also do this. I have no idea why there's no frameworks that find return parse int ID. Interesting. Okay, now it's gonna be an error. But it still returns me null for some reason. Is this passed as a string as well? Okay, so the thing is that I think it also transforms this part into a string, like this, the parameter. So ID is equal to parse int of the ID that the user has passed. Oh my God, what? What did I screw up? No, I didn't do anything. It just was reloading. Yeah. So the thing is that it transforms both into an ID, into a string. So you need to parse int both of them. Any other questions? No? Okay, so let me get check out of all of this and go to the next one. Gone. So something like this. So when you return a framework, no, wait, it's developers. When you return a framework and you want to return the developers of that framework, you get like, in this case, it's just because I'm using the if that I use the title. But you can say if title equals React, just return Dan Abramov.
And on the playground,
Like this.
Developers name.
Yeah. Need to go back more probably. Oh, I'm not running it. Yeah, but that's the, sorry. That's the queries. I just put developers inside and a name, for example, because that's the only thing that the developer has. So do something like, wait, I can show you in here. So frameworks, and then like title, and then you can pass developers and name, like this. Okay, so now we're actually going to touch the thing that I has to create, the server on Heroku. So we're actually going to use that now. So I'm going to cd into 2, which is server query. Open up code. So I'm going to close this, and let me just do something here. Oh, wait, give me 1 second. It's not here that I want to open, it's back. Good. go. CD 2. Okay. I don't know what's wrong with my computer. It's so incredibly slow right now. Okay. Okay, so this one we're getting, I'm gonna yarn dev just so that it starts. Are you doing anything? Okay, there we go. We got an error. Nice. That's what I wanted. Okay, so in this case, we are going to use Postgres, and we're going to use a library called Sequelize. What Sequelize does is that instead of actually passing select something from something, you just pass like get all or something. It's an easier way. It's like MongoDB, but it's like the MongoDB syntax, but for other things. So it's easier. You don't really need to know a lot about it. It's just to get stuff. So I'm actually using process.m things, mostly because this is on GitHub. So this is the link that you have in Heroku. If I go to Heroku dashboard, let it open. Maybe. Yes? Maybe? No? Oh my God, internet. Dude. Jesus Christ. Oh, okay. It reloaded me the same page. Nice. What the fuck? Okay, there we go. So you get your thing, and in there is a part that says access. No, it's not access, it's settings. So you have a thing called settings that it has config vars. Where is that? Oh my God, there's a thing here, metrics, activity, access, overview. I don't think it's on overview. Oh yeah, okay, so you need to go into your thing, and then there's install add-ons, Postgres, which opens up a new page. That is probably gonna take, again, 30 minutes. So you need to go to the Postgres thing that you created in the beginning of this, and there will be a link to set it up when this loads, which is probably 20 minutes from now. Wait, is it gonna do it? It's loading. Okay. Okay, cool. So now there's settings, and in here there's database credentials. So this is my database connection URI, and this is basically what it's in here, but with the process.m things, which means that I have in here in the main folder, I have a m file which has password, username, and db. You don't actually need this. You can just, if you're not gonna put this on GitHub, this is also, oh my God. This is also like if you're not gonna put this on GitHub, you can just copy and paste that URI into here, and that's fine. If you are gonna put this on GitHub, there is an env that example here that you need to put your things on, basically. That's it. I also need to change mine apparently. So let me set mine up. Okay, so what we're gonna do is actually search things in this database. So the only thing that I have that is different from the normal Sequelize is that I have SSL set to true and dialect options SSL set to true. This is because Heroku requires you to connect to your database through SSL. That is the only thing that's different. You can connect through it to HTTP. Heroku does not allow it. Then another good thing is that SQLize actually has types as well. So you can define the types. And you have a type SQLize string. You have several types. You can look it up in the SQLize docs, which is SQLizejs.com. This will take you straight to the docs. And so here we're gonna create the type definitions for this, which is a framework, and we're gonna create the resolvers for this. And what we're gonna do is actually get all the things. The first thing that I actually need to do is clean up my database, because there is this thing called SQLize.sync, which will make sure that your database is in sync with your types here. And so to clean up your database, this seriously didn't copy it. OK. SQLize.sync, and you pass it like force true. Since you don't have a database, that's fine. But if you leave it like this, like forever force true, you'll never actually add anything, because it'll just keep deleting all of your records from the database. But I need to do this the first time to clean up the database. OK, so let's first create some type definitions, because it's something that we already did. Let me just make this bigger. Yeah, there we go. So type definitions is a framework. Wait, so we have a type of framework, which has an ID, which is created automatically by Postgres. That's why it's not defined at the top. Which has an ID, that is an ID, and it's mandatory. It has a name, which is a string, and it has a get, which is a string as well. OK, cool. And we also have resolvers. So this is where we actually get things from the database. So by database, I mean the Postgres database that we just created. And there are a couple of methods that you can use. The reason I use this SQLize is because the methods are way simpler. Let me just try and touch Windows computers. There we go. OK, so the resolvers, so we create the same thing. So query, I know I haven't created the query thing yet. So query, and then we pass the name of the query, which in this case, we're going to just kind of call it frameworks. And then we do this. And then, so the thing about this is that this exports a thing called framework, that this is your model, which can be like a database table on Postgres, for example. So all you have to do to find every single thing in that table is that find all, which is, yeah, there we go. Also, if you're using VS Code, they have auto-completion for this, which is really nice. And so find all will get all of the things that exist in that database. So let's create the type query first. Not first, after that. So type query. And this will be frameworks. And this will return an array of framework. I don't know why there's a space here. So let me try and run yarn dev. Starting node that. Yeah, it's probably not small. What? Nope. Nice. OK, so it actually started the server. So let me go on localhost 4000 and try to get all the frameworks. Let me close this. My computer is incredibly slow. OK, so if I come here, delete what I have, and search for frameworks, and go and like ID, for example, I get an empty array of frameworks because there's nothing defined in the actual database. So right now, I can actually delete this. Where is that sync? That sync first true. There we go. And this is what you're supposed to receive because you have not put anything in the database. So this was just to actually set up the part where we connect to the database. And now we're actually going to create a mutation to put things in that database. So let me just open this. OK, cool. OK, so the database is already connected. And now we're going to go over the type of mutation. So you have a type of query, and you also have a type of mutation and a type of subscription, which is like a super advanced thing. It's mostly used for chats and stuff like that. So let's create a type mutation. And in here, we define what we want this mutation to be named and what it will return. So what we'll do with this mutation is that you will pass a name and a get, and it will actually create a framework in that database. So for this, we want to create something. We want to do something called add framework, for example. And as a parameter, this will get a name and a get. So the ID is generated automatically because we are using an actual database, which is nice. So we will use a name, which is a string, and a get, which is also a string. If this is slightly confusing because it gets slightly big, you can also say input framework input. Framework input is equal to this, and pass it in here, put it in 2 different lines, and then not with this. I don't know what that was. And pass that in here as framework input, and this will return. So a good practice that exists in GraphQL is that every time you delete something or create something, you return the thing that you created or deleted. So in this case, we're going to create a framework, so we're going to return the framework that we actually created. OK, so does everyone understand what we're doing here? Not the actual code, but what we're trying to do? Yeah, thanks. Cool.
One question.
Yeah.
If you delete something, what you should return?
The why you deleted. So you have 3.
For example, I delete one on framework.
Yeah, you should return the framework that you deleted.
Okay. Can you tell me what A?
So you get the framework to delete it. So in the resolver, you say, get this framework, and then you say .delete, for example, on that framework. You return the framework. That's it. You need to return the thing. You don't need to return the thing that you deleted, but it's a good practice. You can not return anything or just return a string or just return a status, for example. But it's a good practice to return what you deleted. OK, so we have 1 entry point right now, and we need to have 2. So I'm going to create a resolver for mutation. And we're going to do the exact same thing as we did for query. And first of all, I'm going to save just to make it prettier. And we're going to have an add framework here. The parameters are exactly the same. So you get the parents, and then you get the params, and then you get the context, which we're not using. So the parameters are exactly the same. Framework input as a name and a get. So we can deconstruct that if we want, so name and get, so that it's easier for us to use. And now let's create the actual function that will do this. Who's comfortable with async await in JavaScript? OK, so you want me to use promises, or you want me to explain async await to the people who are not comfortable? OK, cool. So let's make this function async. This means that we can await things inside of it. And so I'm going to just very quickly explain what async await is. So in this case, we need to create a framework in the database, which is an asynchronous process, which you can attach a then to. So when you have a promise, you can say that then. And what async does is that it basically attaches the result of that promise to a variable. That is the main difference. Instead of doing like a chain of thens, it looks like it's synchronous code, but it's actually asynchronous. So I'm going to call this returned framework. The created framework, sorry. That's a better name. Created framework. And this will be equal to what we actually create in the database. So we await this. This means that this const will only have a value when this promise is done, basically. That's it. So we await this, and we say framework, which is our model up here. So framework that create, which is the name for the thing. There we go. There's also things for like create bulk and everything. You can look at the documentation. This is actually a really cool library. So you create, and then you pass it the parameters that you want it to be created with. So name equals name, and get equals get. The moment I save, this is going to do something that is, so this name and this name are the same, you don't actually have to pass the second one. So if I save, oh, actually my prettier didn't do it. But you can also just do this, which is the same thing. So this actually returns the framework that we created. And all we need to do is return the created framework. So if you look at the query and the mutation, the parameters and everything are exactly the same. So what actually defines a query and a mutation, like the difference between them, is what you actually do inside the function. You can do a mutation inside a query. No one is stopping you, because it's literally just a function. You can do whatever you want inside of it. You shouldn't, but you can. So these names, like mutation and queries, are just to get us used to having the different types of things for different things. So basically, in the query, I can just copy this over here, and it would still work, but that's wrong. Just don't do it. So you should separate in mutations and in queries the different things. Queries will get things from the database or API. Mutations will add things to the database or the API, or delete things or update things, something like that. So mutations are posts, updates, and deletes, and queries are always gets, basically. Does that make sense? But you can do it the other way, and that's just wrong, but it works if you want to. It's fine. You can create an add framework as a query, and that works. OK, so let's see if I did everything correctly. I didn't, so let me check what's wrong. Oh my god, dude. Unexpected. So OK. If you can find it before I can, that would be dope. What? Oh, I know why. Because you need to pass it as like params equals framework input. Yeah, so this will require a change that we'll see here. Wait. OK, cool. OK, so it actually found all the things that we needed. And now, so let's get all the frameworks. And this will return an empty array. One thing, a really cool thing is that you have tabs here. Tabs are cool. So here, since by default, everything that you do in the GraphQL playground or GraphQL or whatever you use is a query, you need to write mutation. You're not forced to give it a name, but you do need to explicitly say, this is a mutation. So mutation, and as I type add framework, I think. Oh, I need to reload the page. That makes sense. Yeah, so now I'll have autocomplete. So add framework. And this will return a name. And so I'm going to get the name, the ID, and the get. And so in here, we actually need to pass the params and then pass it an object with our parameters. So if you create an input, you will need to pass it as inside of something. So inside of params or arguments or anything. If you want to do the way I did it in the other one, which is just pass the things inside of that, you can just remove this framework input and copy this into here. This is totally up to you. It's like a design decision that just makes sure that every mutation and every query does the things the same way. And as long as it does, it's completely fine. So parameters, I'm going to give it a name of React. And I'm going to give it a get of, I have no idea, React.js. I think it's Facebook. GitHub.facebook/React.js, I think. Oh my god, just let's pretend it's this. Is it this? No. No, it's this. Got it. Got it. Got it. You can just pass a fake one. So you add a framework and you pass in as the params, because since we define this as a type, an input, we need to assign this input to something. In this case, we assign it to the name params. You can assign it to something else, as in like framework, and then open the braces. And then we pass in the two things that we need to pass, so the name and the get. The ID will be created automatically by the database, so that's completely fine. And if I run this now and hope for the best, this will actually do something, not what I wanted, but it did something. So we created the framework. It just didn't give it a name for some reason. Sequelize.sync, name, type, get. OK, cool. Await, create, name, get. Yeah, that is exactly it. What the fuck happened? let me force this to true. Clean that thing. Let me do this again. Okay, this is reloading. Relation frameworks does not exist. Okay, done. Let me remove this.
Server could not be reached because maybe your .env file is located in another location.
No, I know what I fucked up, because this is part of parameters now. So out of the thing, you want to get parameters, and out of that, you need to get the name and the get. Yeah, that's the problem. Sorry about that. I mean, I'm not sure that's the problem. I just hope that's the problem. Yeah, that was the problem. OK, so this actually, as I said, this returns the framework that you just created. This is for consistency's sake, and also because Apollo allows you to have update their cache manually in React. So when you actually get the framework, instead of having to reload the page, you can just push it to the cache. And this is how you actually create a framework. Does anyone have any questions about this?
About input. So if we
Yeah.
don't use smart params, so it could be like params in mutation function.
I'm sorry, what?
In mutation function, if we don't use this spread, so it could be like params, yeah or no?
Yeah. So if I just put like args here to not put params, that's basically the only reason. And I put const name is equal to args.params that name, for example. Yeah, it's the same thing. And I can do the same for git.
So when we use inputs, so we should use, not should, we must use, yeah, this name params.
No, you can use whatever you want here.
Okay, it's my...
It's your complete choice. So I can call this framework, or you can call this args. You can call this poop if you want to. It's fine. I call the params. I don't even know why.
And it's only the case when we use input.
Yeah. So I can do this.
Without this.
Yeah, and this works. But if you want to split things, you don't actually need to use input. It is better after a while, because when you have a lot of things, it gets better. But you don't have to. Yeah. So if you don't want to use input, you can literally just do what I did in the other one, which is just pass it straight up. Does anyone else have any other questions? Yeah.
From where we get the function create?
This is a part of Sequelize. So Sequelize, if I come here and just write framework dot, there we go. So this is done by Visual Studio Code, but you have a lot of functions. So you can actually do something like after create. There is wait. You can also have like bulk create, in which you pass it like an array of stuff. This is not part of the GraphQL thing. This is part. You can also count, create, destroy. Destroy will remove it. You can find all. This is find by ID. You can find and count, for example. There's a lot of stuff here. And you can check all of this out in the Sequelize docs, Sequelize.js. And so you can go to querying right here. The good thing is that this works for MySQL, SQLite, Postgres, and I don't know what the other one is, and they all have the same. This also all of the functions do the same thing, no matter what database they're using underneath. So yeah, so you have find all. You can use like find all where ID or author ID equals this. This is all in here. It's not the docs have everything, but they're fucking confusing. So I'm just letting you know. But they do have like all of this stuff. You can do like really huge queries right here. Find all. What is that? Yeah, there we go. Creating persistent instances is the create methods right here. Yeah, sure. What do you need? Yeah, you can name it whatever you want. You can name it add, you can name it create.
Yes, we don't have type of mutations like create, update, delete.
No. No. A mutation is any type of post, update, or delete thing in. So it's up to you to actually name them in a way that you will understand in 6 months.
And it gets only one parameter. The functional mutation function.
Oh, this? It gets the exact same parameters as the query. So it gets the parents, and it gets the parameters, the actual args that the user has passed. Yeah?
Can you spread the parameters in the mutation function? Like you add the type add framework, and can you type like 3 dots and then?
Yeah. Sorry. So if I come here and just get the params, I can do this as well. So do this and spread the params. Like this?
No, I mean exactly at the type definition, type mutation. It's about.
Wait, give me a second because I fucked up here. There we go. Here?
Yeah, here. Can you type like instead params like 3 dots and then framework input?
Type params 3 dots framework input.
No, it's definition. It's
No.
not JavaScript. It's on the screen.
Okay, but there is something in which you actually do that. So imagine that you have a bunch of stuff that always returns an ID, a name, and a get. You can create a fragment. I'm doing this by heart, so if it works like shit, just let me know. So this is the framework fragment. So I'm going to name it framework fragment. No. Framework fragment. Fragment. And this needs to be of something. So this is type framework fragment of, I think it's of that you write, of framework. And in here, it's probably not this. You pass all of this. And in here, you can just use it like this. So with 3 dots. So let me just check fragments real quick. Wait.
I'm sorry. It's for fragments. It's for query. If you want to work with type and don't put the paste, you can use extended.
What?
One type can extend another type.
Yeah, sure.
But fragments, as I know, don't work with type definition.
No, the fragments are for type definitions.
I believe for queries when we send one line. Let's check.
Oh my god. This computer. Oh my. No, that's not it. Oh, great, thanks. The documentation is so bad. Oh, there we go, fragments, Jesus. Yeah, fragment comparison fields on framework, sorry. Yeah, so if I do the exact same thing now, it's closed for some reason.
But you define it ID is quite parameter of the fragment. I think it will not work for input.
No, that doesn't work for input, no. And this is also mostly for queries. Oh, yeah, so type. Oh, yeah, no, that is correct. So this only works for queries. This doesn't actually work for types. Yeah. So this framework, you actually need to type it like this. So this only works for queries. So if I copy this, wait, and I come here, for example, just reload the page. Okay. Okay. And I define this fragment, the fragment like this. And the fragment returns the ID, the name, and the get. Then I can get this fragment and paste it in here. Just do 3 dots and fragment, and this will work. So you can use it in multiple things. It's right. You can use it in types. Sorry about that. I got super confused right now. That shit confused me. You can use it in returns. You can also import this in like in JavaScript files, like in not JavaScript, in GraphQL files. So you can create one fragment, import it in another place. You can also remove the name here and return that fragment plus the name, and we'll return the same thing. So this now takes longer because it has to actually go to the database. Yeah, so it just changed the thing. So you got ID, get, and then you return the name. Does anyone have any other questions? No? Can we go to the exercise? Yeah? Cool. So no errors here. OK, so let me cd back 2.1. Nope. cd back 2.2. Dude, what is this? What do you do? Oh, yeah, this is 3. Sorry. So there is a 3.2, which is the exercise. So I'm going to open this in code again. And like I said, you can create the env or just copy and paste it. So let me close this, and I'll explain what you need to do here. OK, so first of all, you initiate sequelize. Like I said, this can be done like this with the .env that is in the main folder. There's a .env.example, or you can just copy and paste it here if you're not going to put it on GitHub. There is no need to use process.env. And then you define the framework. In here, the first time you use it, you need to use force true to actually create. What force true does is that if the database already exists, it deletes it, and if it doesn't, it creates it, basically. That's the only difference. The force true in this sync. Then you have all your type definitions, so the ones that I added, which in this case are in here, are not in an input. And so what I want you to do is create a remove framework that will receive an ID and will delete a framework. So the way that this works on sequelize, because the point of this is not to understand sequelize, you have a find by ID. And this actually, so if you go frameworks.find by ID and pass it an ID, this will return a framework. And when you get that framework, so you get a framework, and you just got to call destroy on it. And if you call destroy on it, it will actually remove it from the database. Does that make sense? What you need to do in here? So imagine that you get this framework, and instead of creating it, you get this find all. Instead of this, you get find by ID, and you pass in the ID. And then when it finds it, you call framework.destroy, or whatever the name of the variable you named it, .destroy. And you need to return the framework that you deleted, basically. So the add framework is already here, so that you can add a couple of frameworks. You can add dummy data. That's completely fine. And yeah, that's it. Does anyone have any questions about this exercise? No? OK, so the food should probably be here quite soon. So when the food is here, the exercise is over.